Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar are the big three of rap. While there are plenty other stars in the genre, they are the only superstars, and no matter who you listen to, you have an opinion on all three. This isn't at all exclusive to rap. If you look at basketball, they have players like Steph Curry and LeBron James. If you look at football, you have Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And if you look at other genres, you have people like Taylor Swift and Beyonce. If this genre-defining tier isn't doing well, then the entire genre is going to be bottlenecked, and I think that is what's happening right now.
Today, the genre is already showing signs of fatigue.
It just feels fractured. So a bunch of different artists all doing their own thing.
Is hip-hop dying? Has the music just been bad? Are there no superstars releasing music?
Music is not as good as it used to be.
If you look beyond all the stars we have today, you can see billions of years ago in the 1940s, we had some of the first small stars that were really pastors trying to make their sermons more interesting, or a group called the Jubilaires.
Hey, children, stop still and listen to me. God walked down to the brandy sea. He declared that the evil was the son of man.
While this was never huge, it took time for it to develop into something a little more defined, which Muhammad Ali would help with in the 1960s. Ali wanted his fights to be more interesting, so before he would start pseudo-rapping before the term rap even existed, where he would talk about how he was the greatest and that anybody's gonna lose to him, and then he would go and end up winning the fights.
I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean I make medicine sick. Man, dude.
Somebody told me George Foreman was awful strong. I said he should try Van Roll-On. That's the deodorant.
Over time, people started realizing that it was a really entertaining way of talking and would even put Ali's speeches over instrumentals.
This is the legend of Cassius Clay, the most beautiful fighter in the world today. He talks a great deal and brags indeedy of a muscular punch that's incredibly speedy.
The term rap wasn't even being used at this time. It was actually used in the 70s when a group called Sly and the Family Stone started to really establish it as a genre.
If you want me to stay, I'll be around today to be available for you to see.
They made the foundation much stronger than it was before, but it still needed a lot of work, which would come again in the 80s. The 80s is when the first ever rap song went #1 on the billboards, and that was because of a girl named Blondie. Now, just to be 100% direct, the song going #1 had a lot to do with her being white, but it was massive for the genre because this means it was introduced to the most profitable demographic in the United States: white people.
Fab Five Freddy told me everybody's fly. DJ spinning, I said, my, flash is fast, flash is cool, Francois, c'est pas, flash ain't no do.
After this, guys like Curtis Blow would take the baton and lead to a lot more names that you might be familiar with. I'm talking about people like KRS-One, Rakim, Vanilla Ice, NWA, Tribe Called Quest, Snoop Dogg, Nas, MC Hammer, the Beastie Boys, and even Wu-Tang Clan. Everyone I just mentioned played a big part in making the foundation actually strong enough for things to be built on, which is exactly what would happen when we got the first two superstars, Biggie and Tupac. These guys were going to be huge for the direction of rap for years to come, but what ended up happening was something very odd. Some people think they were manipulated by the music industry.
It was, to me, an industry thing in a way. New York had the throne for so long, and here comes these West Coast rappers.
While other people think it was just the climate of the US at the time, but they would end up getting in a feud, which would lead to years of East versus West rivalry and gang violence. Neither Tupac or Biggie would end up making it to the end of the decade, meaning that the genre now had space for more superstars than ever for a number of reasons. The first one being that now that Tupac and Biggie were gone, two people at the very least had to replace them, but they also made the genre bigger than it had ever been before, so there was space for a few more people on top of that. Even beyond that, they started the East versus West Coast rivalry, so if there were two stars on the East, there had to be two more on the West. Missy Elliott, Jay-Z, Dr. Dre, and Eminem would arguably be the artists to take advantage the most of this opportunity, and some of them would fade out earlier than others, leading to even more superstars such as Outkast, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent, and Kanye West popping up. This led to the first time in rap where the older stars seemed to be obviously moving past their prime, and there weren't a ton of young superstars coming in the door. Dr. Dre focused on his label rather than making music. Lil Wayne ended up passing the baton to Nicki Minaj and Drake, and Jay-Z also focused on his own label. and was able to give us another superstar named J. Cole. J. Cole was nowhere near a superstar at this time, but he was networking with some other people, including Dre, who again was focused on his label. He ended up telling Dre about an artist named Kendrick Lamar, who would be signed to Dre's label later that year. All the current superstars were passed down from other superstars. It is worth noting that another superstar at this time definitely was Kanye West, but since then he's kind of removed himself from the conversation. But the entire time that these guys were on top, there wasn't really anybody challenging them for a spot besides maybe Childish Gambino, but he decided to go to acting instead. This pretty much leads to where we are today, where it feels as though nobody has really challenged anyone for the top spot in years. Kanye has well removed himself from the conversation, and it feels as though our current big three are clearly slowing down and shifting their focus on other things. We kind of have to answer the question of, why do these superstars matter? There has probably been a time where you were really excited about some music that you heard and you really liked, and you went to go talk to somebody about it and they just had no idea what you were talking about, or they weren't interested in that same song. This is where the superstars matter. They are guys who are the best and the most capable of bringing everyone together. When J. Cole or Kendrick or Drake drop an album, it's not big for their fan bases, it's big for the genre. And you'll have people who barely listen to music talking about what they thought of the album and what they think of the artist. So now the next question is, where are all the people challenging them? And the answer is simple. They're dead. I'll start off with potentially the least controversial one, but one that people will still fight me on forever. Listen to this clip of Cole Bennett.
I remember the first time seeing his name up there with like Drake, Juice, Taylor Swift, Post Malone, Travis Scott. These are people who have machines behind them, right? That's the whole, drive behind some of these huge artists, like, whoever's up there. That's part of their stature, is keeping them in that top 5 in the world. Juice wasn't trying to be that. Juice just became that.
I'll talk about this a lot more in a future video, but I don't think the music genre has realized how much potential Juice WRLD really had. He was someone who was only in the mainstream for less than 2 years and was able to completely transform the music industry while also threatening the likes of Taylor Swift, Drake, and Travis Scott. There were labels that wouldn't let artists drop on the same day as Juice WRLD because competing with someone like Drake isn't something that doesn't happen, it's something that literally has not happened outside of maybe 2 people. But, as I already said, he's not a threat to the big three right now because he's no longer alive. Another one is the notorious XXXTentacion. No matter what you think of him, he was somebody who proved that he was much more than a one-hit wonder. He blew up with the aggressive style, and when everybody thought he was going to stick to it, he switched to something that was completely different, but somehow performed even better than his breakout single. X was someone who arguably paved the way for someone like Juice WRLD to pop up in the future, and he never got to get past his second album. While he was only able to put out the 2 albums, both albums did incredible numbers and had fans wondering what could have been in the future of X's music. Truthfully, X is the type of person that is either going to end up being one of those genre-defining superstars or somebody who fades out relatively quickly because he experimented a ton. The problem is, when you experiment a ton, it either really works or really doesn't. The only problem is, the entire time that he was alive, it really worked. Regardless of what you think of either of them, they were gonna have prolonged runs in the industry, and both of them could have challenged the top guys for at least a period of time, but instead we're left with a lot to be desired. This kinda leads us to where we are today. Whether you love them or hate them, both X and Juice had massive fan bases who were waiting on the edge of their seat for them to drop every single year. With that being said, when X died, most of his fan base seems to have gone to Juice WRLD. When Juice died, there were millions of fans who were introduced to the genre through him and X who don't have any clear superstar to root for, meaning that there's kind of a void spot waiting to be filled by another superstar. But instead, it's been filled by a bunch of smaller stars who aren't really bringing the people together like a superstar is meant to. This puts us in a weird position where our big three right now can bring a large portion of the community together, but there's still a really notable portion that doesn't care for any of the 3 of them, meaning that they're less superstars in a sense because they can't bring the genre together like they're meant to. Another problem beyond this is that a lot of fans are kind of scratching their heads when trying to imagine who's going to be the superstar to take the reins after a Drake or a J. Cole or a Kendrick Lamar. But I have a few guesses as to who that would be that I'll be talking about in my next video.